I don't have a doorbell on that door. What in the world? What in the... An empty box for an Iron Man figure. Why is it empty? What the... Okay. What the heck are you? I really don't know. But I mean, it says on your box back there. What? I told you, I know as much as you do about this situation. Oh... Oh, fine. Do you mind if I mess around with you for a bit? Figure you out? Fine. It'll be better than being stuck in a box anyways. Thank you. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the toy review, where we're finally hitting the belated conclusion of the Iron Man-athon, where we're reviewing the mysterious final figure, the amazing Yamaguchi Bleeding Edge Iron Man. Now this little toy review miniseries has been going on for, what, over a year at this point? Jeez, that's too long for reviews over one specific character, and in between I did do that Evangelion review in which it got way more views than any of the other reviews that I did. So maybe I should just keep up doing just random reviews of things that I like and are also semi-popular, but no. We're going to keep this up, we're going to finish it, and then we'll be done. I knew I always wanted to finish off this set of reviews with some big, more expensive figure than everything else that I reviewed. But in all honesty, when I was planning everything out back in May 2019, there were a lot of semi-expensive Iron Man figures, you know? There was this one, obviously, coming up. There are also the multiple SH Figuarts ones that I could have gone for, and were probably more popular because they were based on the movie designs. You know, the Mark 50 and the Mark 85. Which leads a person to wonder, why this one? Well, I'll tell you why in this review. That opening segment seemed a bit unnecessary, but yeah, whatever. Let's just get on with the review. To start off, the painting and the sculpting on this figure is stellar. Look at how this figure just shines, and how all the small little lined details are accentuated whenever you look at the figure. You can just tell where the money went, especially compared to some of the other ones which tried to pull off this kind of same shiny effect, but with just sculpted marbly red plastic, which marbles and looks less pristine and perfect, while in this figure, since it's all paint, you can tell that it's just kind of a cool, shiny metal. Personally, I'm fine with marbling when it's only in limited extent, but this is better. I admit, for metallic characters, having it be painted is just way better. Even still, the gold and the red have slight differences in the way that they look paint-wise, in which you can tell them apart as if they're different made of different materials, even though in theory they'd all be made out of nanobots, but because of the conceit of this armor, but whatever. Now to look at the sculpting in more fine detail, you can tell it's an amazing Yamaguchi figure. The proportions are very exaggerated. You know, that's just how this line is. If you look at any of the others, I feel like the only ones that, like, look kind of generically those characters are probably the My Hero Academia ones that are going to be coming out pretty soon, but I feel like that's just kind of because some panels are drawn a lot more exaggerated in that manga than others, so it makes sense that the more exaggerated style would kind of fit those character designs. Starting with the head here, in all honesty, at first, it wasn't something I was all that into. I wasn't really into the way this figure specifically designed the head sculpt. However, over time, it's really grown on me, you know? And even still, if it's one of my less favorite parts of this figure, it doesn't really diminish it that much, as it fits the exaggerated style that it goes for and is eventually over-exemplified when you start posing it. Going on from that, I love how the shoulder pads are done. Because if you look at the way the arms are, in order to ensure maximum posability, you can see that they have just an exposed Revoltech joint there. However, they smartly chose to have a shoulder pad that was specifically shaped to cover that up, and to keep the arms having a natural flow, which allows it to look a lot better than, especially some of their earlier figures, including the Spider-Man and the Deadpool, where their shoulders were just completely exposed and looked pretty unnatural. People complain about this kind of cap thing that goes around the neck, and while it is a bit annoying, I honestly find it perfectly fine. Like, it's fine. It's not the best thing in the world. It does shift around a bit when you try to move around the neck, and it kind of shifts in ways you might not want it to, but it's fine. It's fine. Come on. It's perfectly fine. In all honesty, I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. Moving on to the body here, I really like how they did the sculpting of the body, because I feel like one of my biggest problems with a lot of the Amazing Yamaguchi line, even though I do love how some of those figures look, is that some of the joints can feel really unnatural. And obviously, in my opinion, the best figures toe the line between having great posability while still being able to look natural as the characters and still be recognizable as the characters. However, for the shoulder blades here, he made it so that when you move them around, they just kind of look like shifting metal, you know? Which, for the kind of figure that this is, for the version of the armor that this is, that would make sense, in all honesty. Like, yeah, of course his armor would shift a little bit as he's trying to move, as it doesn't really, as it's a suit that's more natural, you know? Kind of like the Mark 50 and the Mark 85 in the movies, you know? It's nanobits. However, one of the biggest points of contention, paint-wise, has to be the little arc reactor-style bits. And, yeah, it's not greatly painted. I kind of wish there was a bit of a splash of white, especially with how expensive this figure is compared to stuff like Marvel Legends, you know? I kind of expect a little bit more paint quality, but it's fine. I get it, especially since the line seems to be going for more exaggerated comic-y looks. I get why there are some bits of simplification. All of the bits of armor have an amazing amount of detail that when you look up close you can just see it, but it doesn't really detract from the overall look of the suit, you know? It's insane, you know? Looking at the crotch, you can... This is also another smart bit of engineering, which we'll get to in the posability section a bit more. But with the way that a lot of the parts are engineered, they're softer. However, they're also loose, which could be bad for a lot of people, you know? Like, they could be annoyed that it's a loose part. However, A, they managed to stay tightly onto the figure, and B, in my opinion, it allows for better posability, which I feel like for the Amazing Yamaguchi line, that has to be the main conceit, where he wants the best posability that you can out of any figurine that you get. Finally, to look at the figure's legs, this is where some of my own personal QC issues come into play, as you can see a couple of paint blemishes. Sorry, I gotta move it into the light. You know, you can see a couple of paint blemishes, but I haven't really noticed it in other people's reviews, so I think that most copies of the figure are fine, from what I can tell. But, in all honesty, it's still a bit annoying that these kind of QC issues can appear on a figure this expensive. Despite that, I still love the detailing on these legs, you know? They do a very good job of hiding the articulation, you know? And honestly, kind of merging it with the way that the figure is sculpted to make it seem a lot more natural for this very robotic-looking character. So, yeah, take that as you will. Now, you still may be asking, that may not be that can't be the only reason you got this over all the other Iron Man figures that were coming out at the time, you know? All the other figures have just as good of sculpting, if not better than this dinky, comic-inspired figure, you know? And, yeah, sure, maybe, but really the sculpting and the painting isn't the only reason I got this figure. If that was the only reason I got this figure, I would buy a statue. But no, that's not the only reason I got this figure. I also got it because of the accessories. Now to start off with the accessories, we're going to start off with the least modular parts of them, the hands. So, seeing as they were on the figure at first, we're going to start with his fisted hands, which he's got a pair of. Another pair of fists, as you can see here, that have holes in the front of them, who are big enough to fit in the peg of a Revoltech joint, which we'll get into why that's significant later. He also comes with a pair of action hands, which I personally like to use with the blast effects for him blasting people, more on the blast effects later. And finally, he has a pair of flat karate choppy hands, which are used primarily for flight poses. We're continuing with the hands. You can take off these cuffs, which you gotta move the Revoltech joint first, which I will do off screen. And here we go with the cuff off. We can put in one of these cool arm laser blade hand cuff things, where you just slide that back on, slide on the Revoltech joint, which I'll do off screen as well. And Spadingo, he has a cool laser blade arm. Past those accessories, though, I very much want to look at the rest of them in one homogenized group, primarily due to the way that the accessories work on this figure. So, to go over what's being focused on in this little menagerie of bits, what we have are 4 of these square adapter parts, 4 large rocket parts, 8 small rocket parts, as I'm calling them, 6 blue to clear blast effect, or clear to blue blast effect parts, which look really nice. These are some of my favorite accessories from the whole figure. A heck of a lot of Revoltech joints, which we'll see why later. 2 of these cool wing blade pieces. 6 rocket effect parts, though from what I've seen, they are a bunch of different rocket effect parts, but they're samey enough that I'm going to count them all as the same accessory here. And these are expertly painted. I just love how it looks. It is very geometric, but that adds a bit of comic book coolness to it, and I just love the way that these look. And we have a Revoltech part separator, which is very convenient for the way that this figure works. If you look over the figure, you can see that the figure has a variety of these small little, I don't even know if they're 3mm portholes, whatever, but there's a bunch of portholes all over his body, which is how you place all of these individual adapter-based pieces. So essentially what you want to do is you take any part which has a Revoltech joint on it. As you can see, I have one of the wing blade pieces here, and you want to put the Revoltech joint into the porthole. I'm sorry if I'm not showing this well, but this brings me to one of my main complaints with the figure. These Revoltech joints are really hard to get in. You can, especially with the way that they just kind of shift around a bunch, and sometimes they can split on you, though I've found it easy enough to just push them back together, thankfully. However, if you do have one permanently break on you, then you can easily use one of the many replacements that they conveniently included with this figure. Thank you, Revoltech. Because a problem with a lot of Japanese figures is that you can break it and they won't have a replacement part, so it's super hard to replace it, so as such you just have a broken figure. So what I like to do is I get the Revoltech joint out and I place it in first, I adjust it for whatever pose I want, and then I place in whatever accessory it is. However, just placing one part isn't all that you can do with this system. As you saw, I mentioned some of these square adapter parts. And as you can see, each of these square adapter parts, if I can get it into the proper frame, has 4 individual Revoltech ports, which on this one of them is being used up. As such, what you can do is, using the one on the bottom, you can attach a typical Revoltech joint to the bottom, and then from here, you can add whatever accessories you want. So here we'll add a rocket effect part, and one of the larger wing effects, as I call not rocket effects, but like booster effects, whatever you want to call them. You add one of these booster effects, and through this you can add a beam effect part, which also fit into the beam effect part hands, and from there, sorry, the beam effect fell out, you can attach it to whatever port on the body that you like. And I know this doesn't look great right now, however, as you can see, this basically means that this figure has infinite possibilities when it comes to customization and in your poses. Now, you can say that about some of the other amazing Yamaguchi figures, like the Batman one has this style of thing, but for the cape. However, for the cape, that can be a super annoying process. As, you know, you want a cape to look as flush as possible, as with something like this buildable Boba Fett figure, where he just has a normal cape. They didn't rely on using Lego parts for it, thankfully. However, for something like this obviously shows why they chose to do a nanotech armor, because they were able to use the concept of nanotech to include all of these cool, interesting parts to allow the collector to customize it to their heart's content. So, like, you can add the wing blades here to act as arm blades, if you wanted to. Or, for the backpack, for these, you can just attach, like, you can have 2 of these with 3 rocket effects each, and it looks like he's just shooting rockets, a heck of a lot of rockets from out of his back. You know? However, I wouldn't be praising this figure as much as I was if it wasn't for the posability. Starting with the accessories, I just want to do this part for an overall for any of the accessories. Whenever anything is attached to a Revoltech joint in this accessory set, the way that they work is you have a swivel here, a swivel at whatever it's connected to, a ratcheted hinge joint in the center, as you can see with the way that the Revoltech joints work, as well as another swivel post here. This is your typical Revoltech joint, and I feel like this is a really good use for it, in all honesty. And for Iron Man's posability, I'm going to start with the head. The head is on a ball, from what I can tell, is on a very good ball joint, and it's hard to show just this part of the neck because of the way that the rest of the neck works. However, downward, that works pretty well, but upwards, it allows for something that I've wanted out of all of my Iron Man figures. Ba-da-da-ba! Basically a straight-on look ahead, so that for flying poses, he can just look straight, and you don't even have to do any mental gymnastics with, like, arcing the body, even though he can easily do that as well. The lower neck is also attached via a ball joint, allowing for just even more range, basically allowing him to have extremely natural-looking neck poses, which is extremely helpful in this being a nanotech suit, because for nanotech suits, in theory, he'd be able to have maximum range as the nanotech bits just shift along with his body. So, as such, he's able to just move like a normal human would. And this figure is able to move like a normal human would. However, a small problem with this neck joint is that if you swivel it around weirdly, it can get misaligned. So, that can easily be a problem when you're messing around with figures like this. Now, to mess around with the arms, to start, we've got a butterfly joint with extreme levels of range here, forward and backward for the shoulder joint, allowing for extremely natural shoulder-based poses for this figure. Next up for the shoulder pad, it is on a barbell joint, allowing it to move out of the way for most poses, allowing for maximum range for the rest of the shoulder. Of the rest of the shoulder, it's on essentially what I'm going to call a super Revoltech joint, where it has the basic Revoltech joint setup. However, instead of two pin-based ports, it has two ball joints, or at least a pin and a ball joint, allowing it to move forward and back about that far and that far. However, it's added upon by the butterfly joint, of course, and then to move up is able to go extremely high, though even though the shoulder pad allows for an extreme level of range, it is still limited by the shoulder pad, unfortunately. However, the shoulder pad allows for extreme amounts of work to be done. For bicep swivel, there isn't an actual bicep cut for a bicep swivel. However, since it is attached via a ball joint, it's able to move around a lot and in a lot of weird ways. As you can see down there, if I can get it in frame, it's attached via a ball joint. So that allows for it to be a nice swivel. However, it's able to go like that, which I find a bit goofy. The same kind of super Revoltech joint is once again in the elbow, and it's a single joint, but it allows for a nice over 90 degrees of articulation in the elbow, as well as a swivel at the top, and from what I can tell, a swivel at the bottom, allowing for, if I can get it in focus, swivel, like I said, swivel at the top and swivel at the bottom, allowing for maximum options. So if you want this upper limb to be in have a specific look, but you also want this lower arm to be swiveled around, you can easily do that, because there is essentially two swivels in the shoulder joint. And finally, moving down to the hands, it's very simple. They're all attached via Revoltech joints. So once again, swivel, hinge, swivel, as with all typical Revoltech joints. However, if you want, you can easily move it so that it can do nice side-to-side movement. Now, moving on to the body. Whoo, boy, the body is nice. If it will focus, whatever. He has a ball joint at the upper torso, which allows for an extreme amount of range, as well as a ball joint at the lower torso, which is a bit more limited thanks to this hip/butt piece. However, using them in tandem allows for an arcing back that far, as well as a crunch forward that far, an extreme level of range for using just ball joints. Like, holy crap, dude. Now, moving on to the hip, these are a bit confusing. Now, they're able to go forward pretty well and back, not super great. I'm going to do just the forward and back like this, if you don't mind. Forward, as I said, pretty good, and back, not as great, but I don't see me putting him in kicking backwards poses all that often. However, it's when we get to the spread in which it gets a bit weird. So as such, you can see that it only really goes naturally about that far. However, if we put these weird thigh cut swivels into effect, they go at a bizarre diagonal motion, allowing him to do a full splits motion. If it will focus in on the figure, not my hand, whatever. It's able to do a full splits motion. However, it can be a bit confusing and a bit annoying because of the way that these hip parts are built. It can go in weird ways. However, overall it's fine and allows for a pretty good range of articulation, though that has to be the most annoying bit of it. As mentioned before, there's a bizarrely cut thigh swivel here at the upper leg, which you can see pretty easily here. However, it's not that obvious since it's armor, so you can just say that it's just armor covering armor. So, yeah. And then moving on to the knees, it's a single jointed knee, not attached by any Revoltech joint. However, since it's two parts like this, you can basically do a full knee bend, though he doesn't kick his own butt very easily. So, yeah. This figure also happens to have a really cool piece of articulation, a boot swivel, which seems to be attached via a ball joint, allowing it to go in weird directions as well. So you can do whatever the heck you want with that as well. Finally, moving on to the feet. They seem to be semi-ball jointed, however, basically it's a swivel, a pivot that can be limited by this little piece, up and down, and a toe bend, which is a bit loose for my liking. So yeah. Despite his small foot size, which I was initially concerned about because I was scared that he wasn't going to be able to stand well on his own, he is able to stand very well on his own, in at least standing poses. However, if you want to put him in more absurd poses, or like jumping poses, or flying poses, or any sort of aerial pose, he comes with an accessory that I neglected to mention in the accessories section, a nice, clear Revoltech style stand, which works very well, though my only real complaint about it, sorry, I hit my knee on the table, my only concern and complaint about it is that the screws in it are honestly a bit loose for my liking, so sometimes it can flop over onto the ground on its own if you are not careful. But just be careful, don't go too absurd with the stand arm, and it's able to hold itself up pretty well. And the accessories with the posability combined allows me to have a lot more fun posing this figure around than I do a lot of other figures in my collection. Like, holy crap, getting this figure into this pose took a long time, and I know it isn't the greatest pose, but whatever. Getting this figure into this pose took a long time, but I still had fun because it's very intuitive and ingenuitive, and words that mean that it's good and smart. I just find it really smart the way that Amazing Yamaguchi and Revoltech managed to pull this off. And I just love it. And that just makes it basically the main contender for my favorite figure that I got last year. It may not be the best figure, but whatever, we'll get to it. Finally, I'm going to end it off with size comparisons so that you can know how you should put the figure into whatever collection that you are in. So, first off, for typical size, he is, I'd say, about 6.5 inches tall and about 3 inches wide. And to compare him with some of the other figures that I own, here is the high-grade The Origin Zaku, the Power Rangers Lightning Collection Magna Defender, or Magna Guardian, whatever his name was, I didn't watch Lost Galaxy. He's next to a Samus amiibo, I guess. The Marvel Legends Spider-Man Homecoming Tech Suit Spider-Man. The Master Grade Gundam Alex version 2.0. The Transformers Siege Voyager class Optimus Prime and Megatron. The Star Wars The Black Series Clone Captain Rex, or Clone Commander Rex, if we go off of the rankings from the finale of the Clone Wars, best Star Wars movie, don't at me. A cheeky Lego mock of a character that I've been working on for the past couple of months. Guess who it is from the color scheme and the pose in the comments section below. And finally, for size comparisons, here he is with the rest of the figures I reviewed during the Iron Man-athon. The 3 3/4 inch one, the Marvel Legends Mark 7, the Mark 50 just basic Hasbro toy version, the Tahu Master of Fire, and obviously Amazing Yamaguchi's right there. And to rank them from least favorite to favorite, least favorite is the Hasbro Iron Man. He's trash, don't buy him, just get the normal Marvel Legends Mark 50, I guess, and even he isn't that great. Number 4 will probably have to be this little guy, but don't get that, how should I say this? He is leagues better than this guy, to say the least. Number 3 is Tahu here, which I feel weird comparing this list, as he technically isn't an Iron Man. He was kind of a joke that I put in here, like, oh yeah, he's red and gold, why not throw him in? And when I planned this video series out, I had a lot less Iron Man than I do right now. Number 2 is the Mark 7. If you're going for an affordable option, go for him. He is my favorite affordable Iron Man that I own that has kind of the aesthetic that I'm looking for and whatnot. And number 1, obviously, is Amazing Yamaguchi. Not because of the price, but just because of the quality of the accessorizability and the posability and the paint and everything is just so high quality. He is just so good, and I just really like him. That may be an unpopular opinion, but I just really like him, and yeah, definitely try to pick him up if you want. As I said before, this is my favorite Iron Man I have in my collection. Despite the QC issues, and despite some of the tolerance issues, as I'll call them, overall, this figure is just so great, and I love him. The posability is outstanding. The paintwork is amazing, even if I do have a couple QC issues on my figure. This seems to be specifically my figure thing. Other people have had much better looking versions of the figure, and hey, from a distance I can barely notice it. The look is a great merger of movie Iron Man as well as comic Iron Man, and them choosing to do Bleeding Edge allowed them maximum possibility for accessorizability, which I have just had so much fun messing around with the accessories and the posability in tandem. It's beautiful. So yeah, overall, even though he is $95, I very much recommend him. Because, yeah, he's just that good, in all honesty. And yes, I get that the look and the feel and the posability may not be everybody's cup of tea, but for me, this is just great, and I love him. So yeah, I guess he's the end of the Iron Man-athon, an amazing figure. You know, when I started this a year ago, I originally had this planned as a celebration of Iron Man, just because Marvel was coming up on the end of its big, long journey that had been going on for, what, 11 years at that point? Jeez, I feel old now. But he started it all, and I wanted to celebrate him, and then it eventually became me having post-mortem panic over my favorite hero dying in Avengers Endgame. However, now that I see stuff like this, which is great even though it isn't the movie version of Iron Man, I can accept that. My favorite superhero will still continue to live on in great heights because of this resurgence that he got in the movies. That brought even me into becoming a huge fan of this of the Armored Avenger. Just, I love this character, so I thank everyone who led to this character's creation for allowing him to exist, and everyone who worked to make the modern version so good and so special that he became a large part of my life. So, yeah. Also, I thank you all for watching this video series, and even if you aren't watching this video series and just watched the Evangelion review, I thank you. This has really brought me back into wanting to make content again after I burned myself out with the Christmas special and then and losing my old channel, and that really tired me out from content creating, but getting back into it through the toy reviews, I gotta call them collectible reviews now, but getting back into it through collectible reviews has really gotten me invigorated for making content again, so expect more content this summer, and also I'm writing more things, more different types of content, and yeah, thank you all for watching, and thank you Iron Man for existing, I guess, and do the doobly-doo things, I guess. I'll see you all in the next review, which, who knows what it'll be? It could be a Transformer, it could be a Bionicle, it could be anything I want, now that I'm not shackled down by Iron Man-athon reviews. I thank you, and goodbye.